Good morning. Welcome everyone to our Sunday service on this beautiful, beautiful winter day at Ananda. I would like to especially welcome our guests and visitors for the day and our guests at the Expanding Light. I understand we just finished a wonderful program called Awakening the Chakras through Yoga, or Yoga for Awakening the Chakras. Is that right? I would like to take that program, whatever that is. It sounds good. My name is Maria, and this is my husband, David. It's our joy to be here with you this morning. I'd like to begin by reading from The Rays of the One Light. This is the book of parallel passages from the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita, written by Swami Kriyananda and based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. Our topic this morning is, did God create the universe or become it? Dave will tell you the answer. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. The Gospel of St. John, chapter 1, contains a passage that explains the essential truth that creation is a process of becoming. The universe is not separate from God, the Creator, but a part of Him, even as our own dream creations during sleep are figments of our consciousness. God's is the life, God's the reality. Not a melody could be composed, not a poem written, were the melody and the poem not already there, simply waiting to be expressed. In Him was life, and the life was the light of man, and the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. Ego-directed desire is like static. It distorts the radioed messages of infinity. But the pristine impulse from the divine, undistorted by limitation and delusion, is the life that gives rise to all that is. As the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita states, I am the fluidity of water. I am the silver light of the moon and the golden light of the sun. I am the Om chanted in all the Vedas, the cosmic sound moving as if soundlessly through the ether. I am the manliness of men. I am the good, sweet smell of the moist earth. I am the luminescence of life, the sustaining life of all living creatures. I am self-offering in those who would expand their little lives into cosmic life. O Arjuna, know me as the eternal seed of all creatures. In the perceptive, I am their perception. In the great, I am their greatness. In the glorious, it is I who am their glory. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
I'd also like to welcome everyone, our guests and visitors today. This is a reading from Whispers from Eternity by Paramahansa Yogananda. O Father, behold me through the pores of the sky. Smile at me through the twinkling stars. Strengthen me through the sun. Calm my feelings through the moon. Caress me through the breeze. Love me through my love. Throb in me through my heart. Breathe thine immortality through this mortal frame of mine. Speak through my voice. Help others through my hands. Use my mind to inspire them. Breathe through my breath. For within this fragile vial, thou alone canst sing thy complete eternal song. Well, the short answer is God became the universe. But there's an important part of this reading today that speaks directly to the meaning of it in our own lives, which is where the reading said, ego-directed desire is like static. It distorts the radioed messages of infinity. Our lives at Ananda Village, for those who live here, but I'm just sharing with our guests and visitors. Over the years, and anybody who has really followed the spiritual path and tried to find God in their lives, they've discovered that there's not too many deal breakers on the spiritual path. It's not like we have to check off 100 things in our life, and when we check off all those things, then we find God. It's really much, much simpler than that, thankfully. Doesn't mean it's easy, but it is simple. But one of the few things that many of us have discovered over the years is that ego-directed desire is one of the few things that keeps us from finding God, from having deep peace, from having eternal bliss. And so this reading today, that statement is really the one, I think, that really addresses how we can perceive God as the universe, as everything in and around us, and really, more importantly, deep in our own selves. We had a beautiful ceremony this last week. At the beginning of the year, it's also Yogananda's birthday on January 5th. And we have a beautiful ceremony as part of the evening event. And we have different vows of people becoming disciples of Yogananda and different stages of offering our lives, basically, into total and free service to God. Because I think everyone here has discovered, even those who are here for the very first time, that when our lives are directed by ego and feeling and desire based on our own likes and dislikes and our own small needs and wants, we become smaller. When our lives are dedicated to service to others, towards loving God, we become bigger and we start communing with this infinite light and power, and we finally start recognizing who and what we really are. I had a beautiful experience of this recently, and I also just want to touch, actually, before I go on, that this radioed messages of infinity that the reading is talking about is not some vague pronouncement from God offering some, advice to us or profound messages and deep teachings. It can be that, but in fact what it really means is divine bliss, divine love, deep peace, the light of God, those things that really are meaningful, that really change our lives. And when we offer ourselves into that light comes to us and we become free. And that really is very, very simply the spiritual path in what this reading is about today. But recently I had a good example of this letting go of all of your own desires and what comes from that action and what comes from that attitude. I recently had a trip, about a 3-week tour of teaching Kriya Yoga and these teachings of Ananda through Texas and then a couple of weeks in Mexico. And it was a very, very busy trip coming up, and just a couple of days before I was going to leave, I started coming down with the symptoms of the flu. And I could tell as the trip was coming closer that it was going to be very, very interesting, because I could tell this thing was really trying to get a hold of me. I also want to squelch a rumor that someone started that I brought it back from Mexico, but in fact, I was an early adopter of it here at Ananda Village. I just wanted to say that. But sure enough, it was very, very interesting, because It was a very busy trip. I had a lot of talks to give, and I had wonderful help with me in the form of Amanda, who went with me. But I had to do 3 Kriya initiations and many talks and a lot of traveling. I counted 9 different planes that I was on this trip. And for a good chunk of the trip, I was just brutally and awfully ill. The worst sore throat I've probably ever had in my life. It was a very important decision to decide whether I should swallow or not because of the excruciating pain. And it turned into a cough that kept me up all night long for many nights. That went into an ear infection, which made it very difficult to hear. And because I went on this trip without desire of my own, it was purely to serve. It was a really good lesson from God in the attitude that we should always have. Because my desire wasn't to be well and to be comfortable, and even though I was extremely uncomfortable, it wasn't just to kind of feel nice and be happy and all that. My real desire was to serve the people who were coming for these great teachings and these great blessings. And I was really concerned for them because that was really the whole point of this whole trip that I was on. So I really prayed very, very deeply to God, to our gurus, to be able to function enough to be able to give to them. I wasn't praying to be healed or cured or any of these things, which I wasn't, obviously. But the miracle was, and it really was miraculous considering just how ill I really was, that I was able to talk when I needed to talk. I didn't cough every 2 seconds while I was talking. My sore throat, every time I had to talk, my sore throat went away. It was truly miraculous considering how awful I felt, how I was able to, at the very least, give with energy, with strong voice, and then when that was done, go back to having this awful cough and this excruciating sore throat, which was fine by me. Again, had no desires in this, which is not to say I'm free from ego-motivated desires, but in this case, my desire really was to at least be able to give to people who were coming for these great teachings. And it's a wonderful lesson, and it was a wonderful reminder of one who is in charge of our lives. It's not us, but also when we act without desire for the fruits of our actions, there is freedom in that action, and there's the grace and the help of God. There's another story which many of you have probably heard, but I can see a few new faces here, so there's a few people who may not be bored by hearing it for the 200th time, but it's very similar. One evening several years ago, I was experiencing a really excruciating physical pain in my stomach and my side, and it was very unusual, like nothing I'd ever experienced before. And finally, Maria, in her wisdom, said we need to go to the emergency room, and so we did. And it was around midnight on a weekend evening, and it was business is really good at emergency rooms on weekend evenings at midnight if you've ever been there. So it took us a while to get in to the inner sanctum where there were still a lot of people and doctors finally seeing people. It was all I could do was just to sort of try to find a comfortable position, which was close to the fetal position, of just holding my side and trying to be comfortable of this excruciating pain, which turned out to be a gallbladder problem, and eventually it got cleared up. But as I was lying there in this extreme pain, there was a doctor talking to a young lady who had a drug overdose, and she was going in and out of consciousness, and the boyfriend was there, and they were freaking out about the whole thing. And so at that moment, I just started praying for this girl and sending her blessings and asking our gurus to bless her. And literally at that very moment, my own pain went away, just instantly. My problem didn't go away. I had to have my gallbladder taken out, but the pain and the suffering went away. And that comes about, and it came about because I was no longer thinking of my own ego-motivated desire to get beyond this physical discomfort. I was thinking of somebody else. As the reading today from the prayers and affirmations, the way to get love is to give love. When we give love to others, we open that channel for God's love to come to all. When we open our hearts to God and to the light and to the Guru, that light comes to us and frees us and cures us from all the pain and suffering in our lives. Moods are another way of this, if you really think about it. Moods are just the feelings and our own indulgence in feelings and We like maybe being moody sometimes, and we get sort of involved and justify our moods. But again, it's just an ego-motivated action. And when we can get free of that, we can be completely free in God. And that's, again, what this reading was touching upon today. We don't get there through our own great self-effort. Our effort is part of the solution, but we really, in the end, are transformed and changed by that light, by opening ourselves up to receiving those radioed messages of infinity, which come when we let go of our own ego-motivated actions. There's a beautiful story that Swami Kriyananda tells in his autobiography, The Path, where he, shortly after he came to Yogananda, he was really working on himself and found that he was actually developing devotion and was starting to change. And one day he walked into a room where Yogananda was talking to a group of people. And he heard Yogananda say to the others, and he said to the others, talking about Swami Kriyananda, who Yogananda referred to as Walter, he said, "And look how I've changed, Walter." And Walter, Swami Kriyananda, the light bulb went off at that moment. And he realized, well, of course, my own efforts help me only to get into that place where the light of God, where the Guru's help can change me. The word Guru itself is often translated as dispeller of darkness. And in the end, we don't really change ourselves. We don't have to, again, check off 100 things on this checklist in order to get into the gates of heaven. We really just have to put out enough energy to let go of our own ego-motivated actions and offer ourselves up into the light of God. When we do that, we are miraculously and amazingly transformed, and miracles can happen in our lives when we allow ourselves to do that. I often think about this in terms of, you read about Yogananda and the masters and these great saints who become free and become totally liberated and free from all delusion. And we look at our own life sometimes, and we look at our faults, and we look at some of the things we've done, and I sometimes think, probably like a lot of us, and I tend to simplify it more for my own simple brain rather than for others. But I have this image of going up to the pearly gates, probably like a lot of us do, and standing there kind of shuffling your feet and looking down and thinking about some of the things that we've done in our life that probably will disqualify us from getting in through that door. Kind of like an elite club, it takes a certain level to become a member. And I think most of us, if we look at our lives, there's probably some things that we've done that, looks like I'm not going to make it in there. But this image that I've had, and again, it's this idea that came from this Yogananda's birthday celebration, and the power and the light of the Guru to dispel the darkness and to free us. Where even in the autobiography of a yogi, it's a passage that sometimes people don't really understand fully. But when Yogananda finally had his experience of cosmic consciousness, of union with God, it didn't come about through his own efforts. It didn't come about because he did all the right things and checked off all the little things that had to be checked, and then finally God gave it to him. In fact, when he received it, he was sitting there meditating extremely restlessly, and his guru, Sri Yukteswar, called to him and called him out of his very restless meditation, which was his efforts, which were not all that great at that moment. And Sri Yukteswar blessed him, and he had this experience of union with God. So our effort really is just to put us into that light, into that grace. Whether you have a guru, you offer yourself into the grace of the guru, or you just pray to God and offer yourself into that light, you will be healed, purified of all these mistakes that you make that we think disqualify us from making it through the door. So I had this image of standing at the pearly gates and trying to figure out how to get in there. And I realized if I just waited long enough, there might be some other really saintly Ananda people coming along, or maybe Yogananda would come along, or one of our masters. And all I'd have to do is kind of sidle up alongside their St. Peter, and I just have to say to St. Peter, I'm with him. It's sort of a oversimplistic way of saying it. But in fact, there is a deep truth to that, which is that we don't get there by our own efforts. We get there by offering ourselves up, letting go of our ego-motivated actions. Whether we're saying we're with him, with Yogananda, or we're with the light, that's the way to become free, because we're never going to perfect it in and of our own selves. There was another really beautiful experience that we also had in Mexico, where about a year ago, Amanda and I went on a visit. And one thing that we do at Ananda is we have a very simple discipleship ceremony, which is a way of offering ourselves up into discipleship to Yogananda in our line of gurus. And it's a very simple and very sweet, but very powerful little ceremony. And so we were doing it for this one person in Mexico who we had just met for the first time, and he really felt to make this step of becoming a disciple. And part of the ceremony, as many of you know, is that you make an offering to the altar, and you just say a very short, silent prayer to our gurus, and then go and receive the blessing. And whether it was through the lack of translation, or the culture, or this person, which I think is what it was, when it came time to him to go to the altar, instead of a short, silent prayer, he gave a very lengthy, out loud prayer to Yogananda. And it was very, very sweet and very touching. And even though I couldn't understand most of it, the message came through loud and clear. And he stood there before the image of Yogananda and just talked for 5 minutes to Yogananda, and tears flowing down his eyes. And it was just very, very charming and very touching. And because I had met him and understood a little bit about who he was, I had a feeling that it wasn't a case of what Yogananda often called straw fire devotion, which is like straw. When you light it on fire, it's very dry and it puts off a big hot flame, and just as quickly it goes out. Whereas the deep, true devotion is like fire that burns and burns and keeps growing and growing. Because this man was very devotional, he was also very practical. He was a businessman. He also was a martial artist, so he had a lot of strength and inner strength. And so I was curious to see what would happen with him a year later. And sure enough, a year later we went back, and he received initiation into Kriya Yoga, the highest technique of our path. And you could see that it wasn't straw fire devotion. And he understood that it wasn't just a matter of offering yourself up. It was also a matter of cooperating and letting go of all of these, again, ego-motivated desires and actions, and consciously, with your own will, offering yourself into the light of God. And you could see the transforming power of this understanding that when we cooperate with God, with the Guru, with the light, when we let go of our own desires, our own ego, we are miraculously transformed. And this is a story that I think thousands of people who have been connected with Ananda over the years could tell you that exact same thing. This isn't just me saying that this is a great thing. And as a bumper sticker I saw one time said, "God said it, I believe it, that settles it." And this is not just something that God said, but it is something that countless people have experienced. So again, Maria was talking, this is a beginning of a new year. And rather than thinking that we have to check off 100 things and work on our diet and work on being nice and all these other things that are good, they're all good things, but look at the important things. And this is one of the very few things that are most important: letting go of our little self, offering ourselves into the light of God, so that by the end of this year or the end of this lifetime, we can hear God say, the light say, we can hear the Guru say, "Look how I've changed so-and-so," and insert your name there, and realize that this power of God has the power to change you way beyond your own ability to lift yourself up by your own bootstraps. And anything is possible through that power. And I can say that from deep personal experience, but also from watching countless people coming here to Ananda and experiencing it themselves. So bless you all, and take these teachings into a very blessed year.